What year were you born?
I was born in 1955.
And that makes you 70
Yeah.
today sitting in this chair?
Well, and I was born in December, so it ends up being a little bit odd. But yeah, I'm 70 years old right now.
And how many years have you spent as a climber?
I started climbing when I was 16, so I think that means like
54 years?
Yeah, 54 years, which is just crazy.
Yeah, how does that feel?
It feels weird. It feels weird, but it's cool because I've been able to see so much progression through the whole thing. One thing, like I tell Jordan all the time, when I was born, El Cap hadn't been climbed. El Cap was first climbed in 1958. And so, although I was completely unaware of it, of course, but you just have a different attitude when you know that the sport has progressed along with your life versus like Jordan, when he was born, El Cap had been free climbed. So it's a different attitude. I just look at the cliff differently. Yeah, I think
it's almost synonymous to like my generation is like one of the last generation where we were born before the internet, and we like transitioned as children right into the world of internet. And now we have smartphones, and it's going to be AI, and we're going to live to like, I don't know, maybe the end of the world, some people say, dystopia, like the amount of change that we're going to experience in our lifetime is just like so exponential and so groundbreaking. And it seems like there's a parallel there with your life and climbing. It's like, before El Cap was freed, like before that whole time, it was very much like a mountaineering sense of climbing. Technical rock climbing hadn't really approached the scene as much. And now, we're seeing 515D, like the progression that you've witnessed has been like just paramount.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been crazy. People, I tried it when I try to describe rock climbing or even free climbing. I think when I was starting to climb in 72 was rock climbing starting to be its own sport. Because everything was mountaineering. I want to climb Everest. Well, I need to go learn how to use the ropes. And so I'll start rock climbing, and then I'll be ice climbing and stuff. So everything was a progression to that. And so it seems like my generation there, you do have the golden age guys, but they were always looking towards the mountains with what they were doing. But my generation, the 70s with that free climbing push and then the gear changing, accelerating that. And yes, it truly became its own sport. And now we've got subsets of this sport.
Yeah. Like free climbing, then bolting. So you had the technological advancement as well. Yeah, that's a wild transition to be a part of.
When I bought my first rope, I bought a gold line rope, 150-foot gold line rope. And we had you could buy 10 Eiger ovals for $18. And we all bought a set of pins, although clean climbing was just sort of coming out. And so, we wanted to climb clean, but there were routes. There was a book, the Clean Climbing book at Eastern Mountain Sports in North Conway, New Hampshire, where people would record that they had done the route clean. And then, of course, there were the curmudgeons from the generation just before. It's like, oh, these nuts are just a fad. It's like, well, we're kids and we're going, yeah, well, whatever, kind of thing. So just seeing that is wild.
It's funny, like I don't know if it's just a part of humanity. Like someone said recently, the two things humans are most afraid of is change and public speaking.
Oh yeah, that's hilarious.
And like I feel like all these symptomatic of like the politics and the throwing shade and the chopping bolts, it's like all symptomatic of just hesitance to change or resistance to change.
Yeah.
Like, do you think the climbing community is plagued by that like human factor more than some other areas? And if so, why?
To a point, yes. Just because they are, you really become attached to when you started. That was your golden age. That was your back in the day. and people are really afraid of losing that. I always tell people, every single thing has changed. I mean, baseball's changed, football's changed, money has changed, cars have changed. So don't get so attached, don't get so PO'd. You know, be happy that you're gonna see the next thing.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we'll get into this later, but like, I think climbing is like very, a sport wrapped up in ego. And I think that we like attach our identity to our climbing a lot of the times.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
so
yeah.
like you just said, like this was when my golden era, it's like you have all these memories of like the value and the ethics that you brought to the sport. And like when those change, it almost undermines like your worth as a human in a way.
Yeah.
If you've wrapped your life around climbing
If
that
you're
way.
so attached to it that way.
Yeah.
I've had friends that say, "Oh, I don't like where climbing is going, and so I'm not going to climb." And I go, "Well, all right. Well, now you're not going to climb." I mean, okay.
If you're saying that, you're not really that much of a climber.
If it bums you out that much, you know, I really, really enjoy seeing it change and doing those new things. You know, I can still go and do that trad stuff just like I did 50 years ago as a kid in Cathedral Edge. I could still go do that. You can still go to the gunks and be a superhero, run out routes and really technical and all that. And then you can go to Smith Rock where it's just climbing by the dots, you know, and go do it. And it's all climbing. That's what I want to do. I just want to go climbing.
Yeah. Why do you think you are someone who views climbing in that way and is adaptive to change, and others might not be? Like what makes you separate from that?
I've never thought that I was so bitchin' bad that it needed to revolve around me. I thought, well, here I am and it's changing. You know, I saw pitons, I saw hexes, you know, and not like Chouinard had the offset hexes. Well, I had the original hexes, you know, and so we saw offset hexes. So right there was a big old change. And then it wasn't too long where Ray came out with the Friends. So I just saw that, and I just loved climbing in all its forms. And I thought, well, I can either just be PO'd or I can just go have fun and live with this change. It's still rock climbing. That's what I want to do.
I've had a, is there a phone dinging?
Somebody's phone's training.
All right, might be my iPad. Want to unplug the iPad and go toss it in my bedroom?
That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
You are popular. You lied to me.
Well, it's my girlfriend and my daughter. That's all it is. I sent her some photos of this, and she's probably commenting or
Nice.
something.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's actually one thing I always forget to do is take a picture with the guest.
Max and I always took 35 millimeter cameras on all our routes.
Wow.
Yeah, and so our goal, and we knew that it was like, okay, lean out and look back, click, click, and that was it. I mean, we knew that was the thing. And when we sent our photos off for that state of the art article to Mountain Magazine, Tim Wilson, the editor at the time, which was the late 70s, he says, this is the best collection of rock climbing photos I've ever seen. Wow. Max is a good photographer, and I'm a good photographer, and we really made it a point to take photos.
Yeah, I always bring my cell phone, and it's like pics at the belay, pics top down.
Yeah.
It's like pics on the traverse.
Yeah.
You know, there's always good opportunities.
With Scott, it's like take at least one picture per pitch, looking up and looking down, and then we'll have good coverage.
But circling back to where we left off, about the progression of the sport and kind of like what you've witnessed, I've been just having this thought experiment recently of like, just how novelty is like the cure for like the erosion of time. Like the more new things we do in our lives, the more novelty we interject into our life. Like it slows down time. Like when you look back at your life in the year and you did all these things, you're like, wow, actually like that was a big year. But if you fall into routine and you do the same thing over and over again, you look back and you're like, that was like really fast.
What did I do?
What did I do?
Yeah.
And so to relate this to what we were talking about, just like, it seems like, having the novelty be like the evolution of climbing gear. It's like, you're like, oh wow, I get to try new things. I get to adapt the way that I approach the sport of climbing. And with the new technology, I mean, it's safer, it's faster, it's more efficient. Like these are things to look forward to.
Well, and with sport climbing, we got to be in really wild places that we never would have gotten to, had we had to place gear in those things. So just all that stuff. I've always loved the places that climbing took us. There's this thing, I forget the name of the route, but some 11C out in the Needles of South Dakota. And it's like this giant boulder, sitting on top of this needle. And you come out this roof and you climb up the thing. And it's like, really? You guys climb that? Holy moly. But it was just so neat to be there and doing those things.
It's funny how some people would argue that those things are not meant to be climbed.
Yeah. I mean, to a point. I mean, really, 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 all rock does not need to be climbed. There's some rock that, we could just leave that over there. But
I mean, that brings up the whole thing of like, well, climbing is kind of pointless in the first place. Yeah. Like, doesn't serve any sort of higher purpose. Yeah, we're not like benefiting society. We're not like extracting ore out of the ground. We're not protecting our country. It's like we're just kind of having fun in the mountains.
Yeah, it's sort of selfish. Yeah, we're all like, well, this is what I am doing, going over there.
Yeah, and if I die, everybody else has to deal with the consequences.
Right.
But I love it. I'll still do it.
Yeah.
But on this, so we've talked about like this progression. You've seen so much over the years, and I think like one of the we've also kind of danced around like the bolting, the division that happened in the climbing community, and you witnessed all of that. And I think like the most iconic representation of this is the Royal Robbins and the Warren Harding kind of debacle, the thing and what they represented. And I think the coolest thing about your situation is that you were there. You were the first year of climbing. Warren Harding established the Dawn Wall, and you met him, you met these people in person. So I wanted to take a chance to like get your perspective of like who these iconic people actually were. And I want to hear your personal stories about them. So I guess, we can start with Warren Harding and move to Royal after that.
Harding probably never knew my name, but he was in the valley and he was a Lake Tahoe guy too. And so he knew me by face. So he knew that I was a climber, and we had, we would say hi. I mean, we never talked a whole heck of a lot, but he was always funny, and he was always drinking, and he was very aware of what we were doing was just ridiculous. And he was aware that we're only doing it for our fun, for our own enjoyment. It didn't really add up to anything. It didn't mean you were any kind of one person or the other. But he could be a little bit crotchety too. I gave a slideshow in Sacramento years and years and years ago. And this was Max and I free climbing the Salathé, and Max and I one year we went up on the nose and we led and followed the whole thing as free as it had ever been done. Astroman, I think Watkins, Half Dome kind of thing. And he walked out, which it was sort of funny that he walked out of my slideshow. But after that, I forget how long, I was giving a slideshow in Truckee. And I had a really cute girlfriend at the time. And it was in this little restaurant. It's right across the street from the Bar of America. I forget what the name, it was the Passage back then. But, and it was the same thing, the Salathé and free climbing Astroman and all that kind of stuff. And we're in this restaurant, this was sort of the bar area of the restaurant. And it wasn't really too big, but there was something that they did. They gave slideshows. So the audience was there to see the slideshow and drink. So I'm sitting here at a table with my girlfriend, and we're drinking. I had just got done the slideshow, and Harding walks up, and he points at me like this, and his finger's like this far away, and he goes, "Did you use that bolt on the second pitch? Did you use that bolt on the second pitch of East Face? Because if you did, well, then you used aid, because I drilled that bolt on aid." And I'm going, "Whoa, Warren, come on, have a seat. And I bought him a glass of wine and stuff, and I was telling him, it didn't take away from him because we were standing, he laid that groundwork and we were just taking the further steps on his groundwork. And so, enough glasses of wine and he was crying on my shoulder telling me that he loved me. But that, it certainly, I mean, I think he died of, alcohol poisoning. I mean, that's some
Health
point.
complications of some kind.
Yeah. But he sort of needed that a little bit. He wanted to still be valuable. He wanted to still be, towards the end, he needed to know that he had made a contribution, even though he was very much against the whole, what did he call them? The Valley Christians, the Golden Age, Robbins
that's
and Pratt and all
interesting.
those guys. He needed it a little bit.
Towards the end.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Interesting.
But he was always laughing and, drinking and stuff. And I remember they were going, him and Steve Bosky and some other guys were going up on some route. That face that's down and to the right of Half Dome, I forget what that's called. And he said, well, there's some cracks there, but if not, well, we're just going to go up. I mean, it was like, we're just going to bolt it because that's the face is what we want to climb. He was very much, I want to climb that feature. That was the whole thing with the nose. The line of the nose, to a large degree, is fairly illogical. He shouldn't have gone over to the stove legs. He should have just climbed up the corner. He shouldn't have bolted up to Boot Flake. He should have just continued, what I guess now is the Jardine Corner. But he was a location man, a feature man. We've got to go over there. We've got to climb Boot Flake. Holy moly. We have to go over here.
It's an adventure.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. He was, the dawn wall, those corners, and then that roof. Oh yeah, we got to go over that roof. That was his thing. It had enough of a line for him.
Yeah. What about Royal?
Royal was definitely, and we were, when we started climbing, there was that basic rock craft, the Royals, book. And so we were very much, and those guys got more press too.
Do you think that was self-created? Or do you think that was like media bias?
No, there really wasn't that much media, but Harding had his Downward Bound book, which we all read right alongside of basic rockcraft and all that kind of stuff. But Robbins, there was an interview of Robbins in Mountain Magazine.
Yeah, I guess do you think it was self-promotion? Like did Royal Robbins adopt the art of self-promotion?
Oh, I would think so.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And Warren Harding kind of didn't care enough to do that.
Right. And I think that was a little bit of their thing where Harding didn't feel like he was getting the recognition because he didn't know how to do it. Even though, who was it? When Galen Rowell and somebody else were going to go do the regular route or the direct on Half Dome, they had this big promotion thing. And so Robbins stormed up there and threw off all their ropes and climbed the route. And then Rowell and those guys never went back to get any of their gear. But he had heard that they were going to promote it that way. But yet, what was it? The third ascent of the Salthay, Robbins guided it. So I mean, Robbins was very much, this is the way we are doing it because it's what I say is going to happen. In that article, in that interview in Mountain Magazine, Robbins says, there's 9 routes on El Cap, and that seems like a good number. I mean, he had done the first or second ascent of all of them. He goes, every subsequent route diminishes the importance of those 9.
Oh, wow.
It's like, oh, excuse me, Roy. Yeah. So it's like, I've done these routes. You guys should really just
Move on.
Yeah. Because your routes, my roots are the important ones and those have to stay important. So it's like, oh, geez, okay, Roy, I guess we'll just go somewhere else.
Yeah. And did he have like a little fanboy club or?
Oh, totally. Yeah, he was, but even still, he needed that attention. I mean, I remember him being in Yosemite, not a lot. I only saw him in Yosemite once, and he sort of like, was, oh, I hope those guys see me kind of thing. The Max and I had just been on the Salthay trying to free climb it, and Royal was giving a slideshow in Fresno, and so we went down there, and this was the first time I met him, and I walked up to him, and I think I said, "Oh, you're Roy Robbins. I always wanted to meet you." And I stood there, and I put out my hand, and he had his hands in his pocket, and I swear to God, I stood there, 1001, 1002, 1003. And then he slowly took his hand out of his pocket and shook my hand. And I'm going, oh, geez, excuse me. I mean, maybe I should have washed my hand or something,
Yeah.
But he was definitely, I'm Royal Robbins kind of thing.
What do you think? So like these two characters, like if you from today's perspective and we look back at that, like what do you think they represented about the climbing culture? Because I think it's been definitely painted that way.
Royal definitely thought that it was, I mean, okay, they were both moving, climbing forward, of course, because that was really the golden age. But Royal just had an idea that it had to be a certain way and that it mattered, that it was serious. And Harding said, okay, maybe we're moving, climbing forward, but this is sort of stupid what we're doing. And he wasn't as serious about it. There was one of the interviews or something, he compared the Dawn Wall he said, oh, I guess a $330, because there's 330 bolts on the Dawn Wall. He says, I guess a $330 call girl is unacceptable, but yet a $150 call girl, the number of bolts that were on Tissac, is acceptable. Meaning like, okay, who drew the line? Why is 330? Is 329 okay?
It's because Royal didn't do it.
That's exactly it, But yet, Royal and Harding had plans to go do the regular route on Half Dome together. And it would have been the first grade 6. It was the first grade 6 in the United States. But Harding had to go do something else for a little while. And Robbins just got 2 other guys and they just did it. And Harding ran up to the top of Half Dome and congratulated him.
Wow.
Yeah. And I can't imagine that if the roles had been reversed, Robbins would have done.
It would have been slander.
No, it would have something about it.
Wow.
But it was such a serious thing for Robbins. We're building something. This is the way it has to be. And so we were like, well, yeah, okay. We were steeped in that, that classic sense of, the individual, you've got to depend on yourself, and climbing, you don't place a whole lot of protection, and the bold climber kind of thing. We enjoyed that. Definitely bolts all over the place on places where you could place gear was not considered good, but yet we still understood Harding's idea of we're all just playing games here. This is really, we're not solving cancer or we're not feeding the hungry.
How do you see this like translate to modern day climbing culture?
I think people are they're sort of coming closer towards the middle. I think they're saying, okay, yes, we want it to be challenging, but I don't really want to die up here. I'm only going to go so far before I drill a bolt or I hang or something. Robbins would have just gone on and on and on and on. I don't want to drill 15 bolts in a row to do this route, but yet we are out here having fun. So I think when you take that to the big mountains, that ethic of starting at the bottom, climbing to the top is still there. But that's where it should be, really. There was that Reinhold Messner, The Murder of the Impossible, his interview in Mountain Magazine, where he was totally against bolts in any, because, okay, so Cesar Maestri had just bolted Serra Torre. So that was the big raging thing. And so, that was something that we talked about also. It's like, okay, Harding and Caldwell hand drilled 330 bolts, even though they invented rivets on that route. Is that better than a compressor? A bolt in the rock, once the bolt's in the rock, that's in the rock, the route's going to take 330 bolts, whether you drill them by hand or by a compressor. So that was something, at that age, we were still young. We were still idealistic. We wanted the challenge, so we definitely looked down on the compressor kind of thing. We weren't all for the 330 bolts. We weren't for rampant bolting on El Cap. We were all, you got to do as good a job as you can. And everyone had their limit, is really what it is,
How do you feel like ethics should be defined? It seems like you could have the first ascension is just kind of like does whatever they feel like their vision is. But you have this whole situation where like people want to retrofit like Snake Dyke, and the first ascensionist says yes, but then everybody else in the community who is like fighting against it is like, hell no. Do you feel like it should be community consensus? Like, it's such a subjective thing. It's so hard. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where like we're never going to get to a point where everyone just agrees.
Oh, totally.
And so it's like this never-ending battle that we're never going to win.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a tough one.
I was brought up in that boldness era, where ability counted for something. There were Max is such a nice guy, but he said this was so funny. I laughed the minute he said it. And Friends had just come out, and there was only a 1, 2, and a 3, and there was a 4, but there was no overlap. So we needed half sizes. And so we were going to go up on the nose, and we immediately adopted Friends. And even back then, okay, so this was 1979. There was a lot of fixed gear in the nose because people were still pounding pitons, so there was a lot of fixed pins. And so Max and I went up on the nose. We had 3 sets of Friends, and we had 1 number 4. And it was so funny. Max is so nice, but he said this, and this guy was going, how are you going to protect the legs? How are you going to protect the legs with just that 1-4, that 1-4? And Max just looked at me and goes, with my ability?
Yeah.
Which Max is never like that. He's the world's nicest guy. But that was a point. Just we're going to protect it by we understand our ability, we understand our strength, and, we understand this. And so you can protect stuff with your ability. It sort of bums me out these days. There's some routes. You see routes, and they're bolted just like a gym, where the route's got a bolt every 4 feet. And it's like, oh my God, come on. Really?
If I can touch the bolt below me when I'm clipping the next one, it's too close.
It's really hard to not Z-clip every single time. And I sort of go, oh God, this is really too bad. Climbing for me has been about that knowing yourself kind of thing. And that kind of bolting doesn't really require anything of you. And I miss that. I definitely miss that. There's a route at Smith called Dreamin', which Smith was, when Alan was first starting to bolt it, he was still getting tons of grief from the trad guys. So it's a little bit trad bolted. It's not like if Smith were developed today, the bolts would be much closer together and all that kind of stuff. Well, this Dreamin' was 511 plus run out. And I used to just love that route, just because that was the era that I was brought up in. I just loved standing on little holds going, okay, relax, 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 try this move. Okay, step down, relax, figure it out. Okay, back up. I just love that. But, and I think, I don't know, to me, and that's just to me is the thing. That's sort of what we're talking about right now. It's to me, that's the part of climbing I love. But yet someone brought up in the gym, that isn't the part of climbing they love. You hear all the time about, I thought if I took up rock climbing, I'm gonna have to do that sketchy as shit trad stuff. And I go, really? Sketchy as shit trad stuff? What are you talking about? What routes are these? With all the gear we have now, it's like, what? 510C, 15 feet run out? Is that a big deal, I guess? I mean, is that sketchy? But back then, well, these days, we don't have that idea of all routes are not for all people. It's so, I'm going to red point the shit out of this. And so I can do anything. I've seen guys that had trouble on the warm-ups at Smith, which were 511 ABC, working rude boys. And I'm going, really? I mean, it's going to take you 400 tries to do this. And it's like, but yet red point. Oh yeah, Adam Andre red pointed this route after 2 years of working on it. All right, I guess so. Sure, go right ahead.
It sounds like a terrible way to spend time.
Well, to me, I'm not that into it. I actually, the downfall of my sport climbing career was when I spent 15 days over 3 seasons to red point 100-foot route. I went, well, I'd rather just throttle back on the difficulty and go climb easier stuff. I mean, this is great. Yay. I climbed this 513, but I'd rather go climb Astroman or the west face of El Cap or any number of things in Tuolumne, and so that was actually the downfall of my sport climbing career.
Yeah. And I mean, that's that's the cool thing about climbing is there's something for everyone.
Right. And there's that. And I don't get too worked up about it. I can go climb something else. I'm not going to get in somebody's face about bolting this thing every 4 feet. If somebody else does, that's great. You mentioned the snake dike thing. And that was a terrible accident. I mean, you cannot even imagine a worse accident. But that route's been done 100,000 times. And it's like, well, I mean, people have been driving down Route 80. There's a few 100,000 people who do that. And every now and then there's a terrible accident. So it's like, well, not every route is for everybody. I asked a climber, friend of mine, that route was a goal for him. And because you can't ask me if we should rebolt it. I go, whatever, I don't give a fuck.
I've already done it. I've been it.
Yeah. I came up with the idea of, okay, well, let's paint the original bolts red and let's paint all the new ones yellow.
Yeah.
And so that if you want to do the original ascent, just clip the red bolts. And if you don't, whatever, clip the yellow bolts, clip all of them. So, but he said, no, he says, and this guy's, a 5'6" climber, and that was a big challenge for him. He psyched up and he worked for that route, and he probably couldn't even go back and do it again because it was such a big deal. And he goes, no, that was a real challenge for me. I really put myself in there to go do that route. So, and I think his voice is valid because that route
meant something to him.
Yeah. To me, my voice is not valid on that route.
Yeah, it's a tough one. This episode is brought to you by Lives In Designs. Over the last 9 months, I have really put Lives In's clothes to the test. I have climbed over 150 pitches in their clothing. Routes like the Nose, Voyager, Rostrum, and the OG route on Rainbow Wall. And after thousands of feet of climbing, I can say one thing for sure. Lives In's clothes are built to last. The Nose in particular was pretty hard on the fabric, including blood, sweat, and days of continuous effort. And I pulled them out of the wash when I came home to find my pack shirt and EcoTrek trail pants to be pretty much brand new. Stain free, rip free, and tear free. But probably the most impressive thing to me about Liveson's clothing is how versatile it is. I literally took the same clothes I wore on El Cap out of the wash, put them on, and went to work. In my opinion, they are the perfect blend of style, comfort, versatility, and durability. Liveson makes apparel for the entire lifestyle of a climber. Plus, Liveson has an in-house repair program. So if you do tear, rip, or if your clothes fall apart in any way, you can just send them into Liveson and they'll take care of the rest. And if you're worried about fit or just simply not liking their clothes, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you can buy it, try it, and if you still don't like it, they'll just give you your money back. Right now, you can get 15% off your next order at Liveson by using the link in the description below and code TCM15 at checkout. That's the link right there in the description and code TCM15 at checkout. And remember, every dollar spent at Liveson is a dollar spent supporting this podcast. What about ego? You have a quote here. He says, "We need ego in climbing."
Did I actually say that?
That was in our meet and greet.
Okay. Okay.
Do you, maybe that's not resonating with you anymore?
No, it's sort of not. But
I guess there was a time in your life,
yes,
where
yes.
we need to prove who we are and we need to prove that to other people.
As we're growing up, we need to prove who we are. We need to prove that we're worthy, and we need to prove it to ourselves even. And so, yes, we need ego. Ego on the good side is, I want to be a better climber. He's a good climber. I want to climb better than him, which that's fine. Years and years ago, the 70s, when I was in Yosemite a lot, we hung out and we rated every single 511 in the ABC, and I don't know why we did this. We sat around and we figured out how many climbers are in Yosemite right now, how many climbers climbed this, and so where does that put us in the whole hierarchy? So I used to say that I was the most competitive climber around because I wanted to be a good climber, but I didn't want to be a good climber at your expense. I wanted to be a good climber because I wanted to inspire you to do better, so that I would be inspired to do better. So yes, we need ego, but only to make ourselves rise to the occasion, not to put people down. I don't like that, putting people down with it. It goes back to like, climbing is so freaking useless that why am I going to put you down for doing this useless thing and I mean, believe me, I was a dick, to some of my friends back then. And, like my buddies had just climbed the regular route on Half Dome in 5 days. And I went, well, Max and I just did it in 4.5 hours. I was a total dick because, I was still young. I'll give you that when you're young. But if you're my age and you're doing that kind of stuff, I just go, oh, buddy, you need some help.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit before we sat down, but I think it's all symptomatic of like when you don't have other things going on in your life.
Yeah.
Like when you're young, it's like that you can get so absorbed by climbing. It becomes everything to you. Yes. And you're trying to find your ground. You're trying to see where you stand.
Right.
And so like that becomes the hyper focus. It's like, I climbed this. What did you climb?
It's the definition of who you are. And now, at my age, I don't need to be defined by that. I've done that stuff. I'm an old guy. I'm past my peak. I'm on the way down, and I don't need achievements anymore. And that ego sometimes drives you to achievements. And that's not what I'm after anymore.
I think the one thing that when we talked about, one thing that we reflected on is like, when you say you've done a route, there's all this baggage that comes with it to someone else who's climbed it before, because what that person went through to be able to climb that, what kind of person you are, how good of a climber you are, like what kind of risk tolerance you have, like you were able to like pull off those moves. Like there's so much depth to saying like, I climbed the Astroman. It's like, oh, whoa, like there's meaning behind it. I mean, even like with this channel that I've been running, like I've noticed like a shift. Like I've climbed Rainbow Wall, Cloud Tower. I had no red points here. I'm not trying to say that I've like freed every move or anything like that, but I got to the top. I've been on these routes. I've like experienced them and I can talk about them with other people. And there's just like this general sense of like respect. It's like, okay, cool. Like I understand who you are as a climber now.
Right. Whereas, and it's the same thing, really. If some big multi-pitch route was bolted, and then you climbed, it still takes a lot of you to do it, even though it's bolted, and so you've eliminated a lot of that risk and that gear kind of thing. But then if someone just pulls on a few bolts, you still understand what they went through. And then you could be going, okay, well, did you want to free climb it? And they go, yeah, I really did want to free climb it. So you understand that their dreams and their hopes and how they might have been bummed that they didn't do it. So yeah, it does give you a way to relate. Yeah, so there is that shared language. Now, it's interesting, I think, there's definitely a lot of trad climbing literature, but there's no sport climbing literature. How much, like I was just down in Baja all winter, and I spent 2 months writing this article about coming to terms with my last El Cap routes. And it was very just like, who am I and what am I losing? Why? I mean, this thing that has been a definition of me, and I'm not going to be doing it anymore. So who am I going to be? What am I going to strive for? And yeah, I mean, I know people will argue, well, yeah, people are working hard to do these sport routes and stuff, but is it really? I mean, okay, someone, I don't know, just recently I heard that he had worked a couple years and he put like 500 attempts on this one 515D or something like that. Okay, the guy could definitely write a book about that, it would seem. But generally, there's not a lot of literature in sport climbing. Because sport climbing just doesn't take, I don't know.
It lacks adventure.
It does, really.
And I think that's where stories come from.
Yeah. And maybe that's the thing with the Robbins versus the Harding guys. Maybe it is, and maybe it is that Reinhold Messner interview in Mountain, The Murder of the Impossible. You're going up there thinking, I really hope we can do this. I really want to do this.
But I'm okay if I can't.
I'm okay if I can't. Right. Whereas if you've bolted the whole thing, that's a hard one.
It's like, are you familiar with Paul Ramsden?
No.
He's like a 7 times Pilet d'Or winner. He lives in British. He's like the Royal Robbins of alpine climbing.
Sure.
He's like ground up, first ascent of not only an unclimbed route, but an unclimbed mountain in like Pakistan, Nepal, like these big mountains. And his ethic is no fixed hardware, no leaving any gear behind, and first ascent, first descent. And if I have to place a bolt to get up, then I don't climb it.
Yeah.
And so he's like, that's his ethic. That's his purity.
Sure.
He doesn't like put it on other people, but that's his style.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. Although, and we talked about it while you guys were setting up, I've free climbed El Cap except for 2 moves, so I pulled on the bolts on the Teflon corner, and that's as good as it's going to get. So it was such an adventure. It was so, am I going to be able to do this at all? And just meeting Jordan and him supporting me and us climbing together for that whole year, that I felt that calling, and we left the ground, and I pretty much knew I wasn't going to be able to do the Teflon. So I was climbing up into, quote unquote failure. But I didn't want failure to be the definition of that journey, of that whole time with Jordan. I would love to say that I free climbed El Cap. I would love to, I'm semi bummed that I can't say that I free climbed El Cap. And yes, I failed at free climbing freerider, but it was one of the biggest adventures of my whole life. It was an adventure. I pretty much knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I thought that maybe I can just do it. Maybe, bam, it'll just happen. And I went, okay, here it is. This is it. This is part of the story. And the guy you just mentioned, he would have freaking tossed the bags off and wrapped off and said, see you later. You know, and I guess that would have been part of his story. And that would make him happy. And so my story makes me happy. You know, I mean,
I think it's like about goal setting, right? If
Yeah.
you getting on the Salate during that exact moment, the only reason you were there was to free it and free every move, and that was the only goal you had, then yeah, I mean, if you didn't do it, that's a failure. And then you're going to be depressed and you're like, I didn't do it. I hate myself, whatever the fallout from that is. But it seems like, you know, you were coming from it from a point of view where it's like, no, I have all these other goals too. And if I can free it, then I get this consolation prize.
Right. Well, there you go. You mentioned prize. And so that was my little mental gymnastics, my little story where what would you choose? You climb the nose. If you touch the tree on top, you forget the experience, but you get a blue ribbon that says you climbed the nose. Or you look at the tree and you go later and you rappel down, but you can never say that you climbed the nose. You have the memory, you have the experience, but you can't, I mean, it just catches in your throat. You know, you can't say, you can never write a trip report. You know, you can't say you climbed it, but you remember the experience. And so there I am getting ready to pull on those bolts. If I pull on those bolts, I'm not going to get the prize, but I'm going to get the experience. And so that experience is going to be one of the most wonderful things that have ever happened to me in my life. I go further with this and I go, okay, where you're laying there in that bed with those tubes up your nose, you know, and your friends are all around and they're looking at your trophy case and they're going, oh, look, Kyle climbed the nose in May of 2026. It's, oh, I have the same ribbon. I wonder if we climbed it together. But yet, okay, you take your last breath and you die and we walk out of that room. We don't have any stories of Kyle, because there's all his ribbons. We don't have any stories of them. We can't sit around the bar and go, oh yeah, me and Kyle, there we were, you know, blah, 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 because Kyle chose the ribbon the whole time. So I'd rather go fail and have the experience. And, you know, that's what that guy is doing. I would rather fail and have tried valiantly than break the mountain down into something else. Which, if that's what you want, then go right ahead, you know, but it's not what I want.
Yeah, it was interesting when I first heard this concept. I was kind of like thinking between the two, and I was just like, I can't even think of someone who would take the trophy and forget the experience.
Well, I hope my buddy never hears this, but right now there's this whole competition to be the oldest team to climb the nose in a day. So, you know, good climbers are getting to be old these days. Like Jim Herson and Hans Florin are both 65, I think. So they've got 130 years.
Between the two of them.
Between the two of them. And so this guy said, I'm 70, he's 68. He goes, Mark, we could get the record. We could hold the record for like 5 years or something before those guys got old enough to break our record. We could have the record. And I mean, immediately I went, I am absolutely uninterested, because that's completely for the prize. Now, right now, today, if Max were to call me and go, Mark, I want to do the nose in a day, I'm totally in. Because to me, Max is that would mean something to me. I've climbed so much with Max. He's such a good friend that, yes, I would do that, because I know the experience of climbing it with Max would mean something to me. But with my other friend, I'm only climbing it for the prize. And, you know, I mean, I could probably do the nose in a day, but it's a lot of work. I would have to devote a lot of time to it. And I'm just not. Like I just said, if Max were to call me today, I'd go, yes, we're going to do it. I'm going to devote that time, because it would mean something. But But to just go get the record, I absolutely don't care.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think that the experience is the adventure, the experience. That's why I climb.
Yeah. Scott and I, it was blazing hot a couple of years ago, and we were unable to get up on Chaos. And it was funny because Jordan texted me. He goes, well, certainly you can find somebody else to climb Chaos with. And I went, yeah, but I don't want to climb Chaos with somebody else. I want to climb Chaos with Scott. So it's like, no, I don't even care. That's the prize. I want the experience. Yeah.
So we're talking about like experience, and these are the things that you value. In your 50 like plus years of climbing, is there like a single experience, a single moment in the mountains that stands out to you?
So much of when I was climbing with Max in the 70s, we were sort of climbing next to the limit. We were doing things, but it was so cool to be with someone who had that same attitude that I had, and he was willing to go and he was willing to suffer. And we just banged out a bunch of routes, and it was interesting. I remember we were gathering stuff up to do the Salthay in Camp 4, and someone walked up, and we had started to get a little bit of a rep of that we could do. We were doing pretty good stuff, and someone walked up and they said, "What are you guys going to go do?" And we said, "We're going to go try to free climb the Salthay." And he goes, "Really? What are you going to do in the head wall? You're not going to be able to free climb the head wall." We go, "Well, we don't know. We're just going to go up there and give it a try." And it was, I mean, there was only one 513 in the whole valley at the time. And certainly anyone who looked at it knew it was going to be 513. And we just went, whatever, we're just going to go up there and have fun. And that was like this does not compute kind of thing, because we already knew that we weren't going to be able to free climb it, but we didn't care. We were just going there to see what was going to happen. We were just going up there just to, and we weren't even thinking of pushing limits. We were just thinking of, wow, wouldn't that be cool to go up there and like slam some hand jams in the head wall, free climbing, that kind of stuff. And it was just that kind of stuff. And Max was just as into it as I was, and he pushed, and, he fell on the head wall, and we just went up there and did this thing. And we used to sit there and go, isn't it crazy that we can do this stuff? This is like having superpowers. We can do these things. We were so happy. It was just so fun to be able to go somewhere. And Max said it too. He said, I don't want to be a good climber just to be a good climber. I want to be a good climber so that I can go somewhere and go, whoa, what is that? Let's go climb that. Oh, it's 5'9". I don't care. Let's just go. That looks freaking cool. Let's go climb that. Or, oh yeah, it's 5'11 plus. Yeah, let's go. So that was, it was just that driving around the country and hearing about a route and going over there and doing it or not doing it, and just that the sky is the limit kind of thing.
Like a shared mutual passion with another human.
Yeah, it was really fun. We had so much fun doing that kind of stuff. And that, I've been so lucky. I've had great climbing partners. And Jordan, Scott for my big walls. I have a really good friend in Vegas who I climb with, and we're just not at all interested in the rating. We're interested in the climb and being together and having fun. So there's no ego involved. There's no bummer involved. The last time I was down there, she had hurt herself, and so we climbed a 5'7" route. And it was like, we're just going to go have fun. We're just going to go climb some rock. We're going to climb this 5'7" route. We're going to have a great old time. And but that whole time with Max was just, it was just some of the best climbing of my life.
It's awesome.
It was so fun.
What do you think makes a good climbing partnership?
Someone that you can just really It's hard. I mean, I've never had to do that, put the note on the Camp 4 bulletin board, want to climb the nose kind of thing. Although that's how Max and I met, not a bulletin board, but we were introduced. And then he came over to my site and said, "Hey, my partner's just crapped out on me on the nose. Do you still want to go do the nose?" And I had just met Max, 5 days before. And that night we spent on Sickle Ledge and we climbed the nose, and then the rest is sort of history. It's just we had a really friendly competition. I wanted him to do well. He wanted me to do well. We both had a good idea. Like he would say, Mark had an idea of how he wanted to do this route, and I would go, "Okay, let's go." And that would be like Mark's project, and we would just sort of go. And then Max would come up, "Hey, Mark, let's go do this, and let's go do it like that." And I'm like, "Okay, great, let's go." And so he had an idea. We were both sort of creative that way. Let's go do it like this. Let's go do it like that. And just you're back then, where it was trad climbing, we're both more willing to, put it on the line, I guess. We never got too crazy, but we were still ready to go. You never had to worry about this guy backing down. One thing too, I tell a lot of people these days, you got to have an honest assessment of your skills. And we Max did, Scott, as far as wall climbing goes, Jordan of course did. So there was never any bullshit in there. It wasn't let's go do this, ridiculously hard or run out route that you just knew we weren't going to be able to. It's like, you can't do that. He knew he could do it, or, that kind of thing. So just an honest assessment of his skills, and then understanding where your partner is also. Back then, I was the guy who did all the run out pitches. And Max was the guy who did all the really technical thin cracks. He was just so good at that. But that was how our partnership worked. We were, we hiked into free climb quarter domes, and we had those old Chenard cagoules, that, you'd sit there and you'd pull it down over your knees, and you just sort of squat with the hood on. It'd be raining and raining and raining, and you're just sitting there going, "Okay, here we are." He was ready to do that. We did that, and we free climbed quarter domes, and then we ran over to Half Dome. My brother brought us some sandwiches, and then we ran down to the base the next morning, and we speed climbed Half Dome in I remember our rack. We each had a 1, 2, and 3 friend, and we each had a single set of stoppers, and we had a little pint water bottle and a breakfast bar in our pocket, and that was we gave my brother our approach shoes, and we just went, and it was just, he was totally into it, I was totally into it, and it was just fun, and we had a great old time. Just that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you said, I think at least I'm running into it. I personally don't have this problem. I'm very grateful for that, but a lot of people struggle to find partners.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is these days?
I think really it's people do not have that. Well, some people have this real red point idea of anything. Like, we're going to go up the nose. I've never done anything like this, but I'm going to red point the nose eventually. They have no real idea what it takes. And then, you hear all sorts of stories about, oh yeah, we got to the base and they couldn't haul the bag. It's like, what? You couldn't haul the bag? I remember I was in Zion one day, and I was out taking pictures, and there was guys were on this pinnacle, and the one guy was going to get lowered down, but he was questioning his belayer about, threading the gree correctly, and do you know how to do this? And the belayer really didn't know how to thread the gree, and he said, "I thought you said you knew how to use a gree." And the guy goes, "I do." It's like, well, wait a minute. There's only like 2 ways you can thread it. It's either the right way or the wrong way. But even there, amidst all his inability to thread the gree correctly, he was convinced that he knew how to do it. So I'm going, well, I mean, like, what are you talking about? I mean, it's obvious that you don't know how to do it. And these people, they just deceive themselves. How many people they say, oh yeah, the stove legs are 510C. Oh yeah, I can climb 510C. I can climb 510C. And the guy goes up there and he gets 2 feet off the anchor and he can't do it.
Well, I mean, those people actually found partners in the first place.
Well, right, because they sort of presented that I can do this, but yet I can't really do this.
But then after that, you're saying like you get a namesake for being that, and so you get blacklisted in a way from like smaller communities.
You sort of do,
Yeah.
I mean, no, yeah. I remember back in the day when, the leader does not fall kind of thing, you got a rep if you were someone who fell. It's like, oh, that guy falls, so that,
I mean, that's one question I ask people. I said, are you a taker or are you a faller? As I ask new partners that all the time, because I need to be prepared. Like, do I need to prepare for you to be like, hey, take, it's getting hard here? Or like, am I going to need to be prepared for you to be like cruxing, like ready to fall?
Yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah. I can't handle that level of intensity for 4 days. I mean, come on. Yeah. But an honest assessment of their skills, really. It's crazy that people don't have that. I mean, it's an ego thing. I remember one of the first days I was at Smith Rock when I was just learning about how sport climbing was working, and this guy was on something next to a heinous cling, some 12B or something over to the right, and the guy went up on it and he hung on the whole thing, and I went, well, all right, whatever. And his friends walked up and he lowered down and goes, yeah, I just climbed this. It's really good. And I went, really? He didn't climb that at all. But yet he believed that he had just climbed that. And so that's what he's going to portray
to other people
when he tells people, oh yeah, I can climb 12B. And so that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's, well, you can climb 12B. I mean, could you climb in the gym, or do you climb trad, or people just don't have they just don't have that.
Yeah, there's that, and I think the community can be kind of hard to come by unless you like interject yourself into it. I think that's like a lot of the time is like some people just don't have a pool of people to even choose from or be in front of, and I mean, at least for Vegas, it's like you post Partner Finder on Vegas Climbers Group and no one's going to reach out to you. It doesn't seem like that's the case.
Yeah.
And it's also such a crapshoot too. It's like you don't know, like you said, someone might be lying about their abilities. It's like it's kind of a dice roll. You'd much rather climb with someone who's friends with a friend, or someone that you've maybe been following on Instagram and you've been seeing their climbs, and so you have an idea of what kind of climber they are. You have an idea of their personality, and there's like that sense of familiarity.
There's no sense of apprenticeship these days. Back in the day, back in my day, it was a common thing to say, you're not ready for this route. And that wasn't you suck. It's just you don't have enough experience to go up there. And of course, that was back when YOSAR was just getting developed, so rescues were not just a sure thing. Now you freaking dial 911 and go, I'm on the nose, come and get me. And 3 hours later, there you go. So it was a little bit more of a serious kind of thing, but people don't take it seriously anymore. They think, they hear these stories of, oh yeah, those guys from Ohio had never climbed a wall and they drove right into the valley and they did the nose in a day. And it's like, well, yeah, that does happen, but no one hears about those 75 other parties who, didn't get above sickle edge. Kind of thing. So yes, that does happen, but come on,
So your partnership, he left. He stopped climbing and chose mountain biking instead.
It didn't exactly work that way.
Okay. How did that? Because it seemed like, I mean, you guys are having a reunion soon. You guys have like a 50. Well, what's the anniversary? How many years?
50 years.
50 years.
Yeah.
And it seems like you had this period of climbing with.
Well, yes, Max and I were. I climbed with Max exclusively for 5 years. He climbed with me exclusively, and even then, I felt after 79, I didn't go back to Yosemite too much, and I felt that I had sort of done it. And so I slowed down climbing a little bit. And then Max did one more year of being in Yosemite without me and didn't really do anything. And then he slowed down quite a bit. And then, but I think he felt like he had done it also. And so we would meet each other at Donner and we were climbing, but he just wasn't that interested in it anymore. And then I remember one day I was down at Calaveras. I was there with another friend, and Max had driven down also. And this is when Calaveras was pretty much unknown. And Max pulled in, and we talked about it, and Max just looked at it and went, I'm not really into this. And he got in his car and he drove away, and that was the last I saw of Max for like 5 years. And then I continued climbing, and then there was the whole bolt wars where I quit climbing, and I ended up moving to Hood River to windsurf. But Max, I always say that I'm a really good rock climber, and Max is an athlete. So Max, after the climbing, he got into road biking. And so he got into road bike, he got into biathlon, okay, skiing and shooting. And so he said the Russians could shoot better from their hip than he could lying down and shoot. And so he almost got on the Olympic team for biathlon. He said that getting from nowhere to 11th is as hard as getting from 11th to 10th.
Wow.
So he didn't make the team. So that wasn't going to happen. So he got into road biking. And so he was road biking, and he didn't quite like that. Mountain biking started to take off. And so he got into mountain biking. And he became very, very successful. But we had already sort of like split up a little bit. And then I heard about him mountain biking, but I was not into climbing either. Okay, so what happened? I moved up to Hood River. It was the early 90s. Sport climbing became an okay thing to do. I started hearing about Max getting into sport climbing because he sort of felt the same way at Cave Rock. And Cave Rock is the perfect sport climbing area for Max. Max was always the gorilla climber. I was always the ballet climber. And so Max red pointed a bunch of 13s in Cave Rock. And then he came up to Smith and climbed, and that's not his style at all. So they didn't do well at all. But so we didn't really do too much, but then I got back into big wall climbing, and I had done a few big walls, and I finally, was telling Max, you got to come back, you got to come back, you got to climb El Cap with me. And then finally, he agreed to climb El Cap with me. He hadn't climbed El Cap in 32 years. And I said, Max, I will buff you out. I'll provide all the gear, your life is going to be just great. And so we did South Seas, which was great because it took Max like 4 or 5 days to get back into it. And there's a great part of this whole story too. He had never climbed a pitch with cams in his whole life because he would stop climbing before cams came out. And so he was really struggling. He didn't see the sizes and he just didn't understand the stuff. So he was really struggling. But he was getting better. We'd sit there on the portaledge, would talk about it, and he was getting better. And I remember I wrote this trip report, and he was ready. He was climbing up to do the Rubber Band Man pendulum, and I looked at him, and I thought, Max looks like he's back. Looks like he's really like he understands it now. And I had him write something about his experience on it to include in my trip report. At that exact moment, he looked back at me and he said, I'm back. I'm a climber again. I mean, when I read that, I went, oh my God. Because we both saw that. I mean, he realized he was back and I realized he was back at the same exact moment, which really proves that Max is just one of my best friends, and we so totally enjoy doing these things. Well, for the next years, we climbed Lost in America, then we climbed the Atlantic Ocean Wall, then we climbed Reticent, which is pretty freaking hard. And then even just 8 years after Reticent, I got him to climb El Cap with me again. And he's just like, oh yeah, okay. Which is why I say Max is an athlete. All he needs is a couple weeks of notice and he can totally be back in shape and out there doing it. So just that partnership, to be back there with Max. I mean, if we do this thing in the fall as our 50th anniversary, I'm going to cry my eyes out when we get to the top.
What's your goal?
The nose.
You're going to do the nose with
Yeah.
it? Nice.
Yeah. Because that was our first route.
Are you going to try to do it in a day or?
No, we talked about that at one point, but I said, no, Max, let's just go have fun, So, but it's going to be my last route and it's going to be with Max. And so that's going to really, really mean something to me.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll get back to talking in just 1 minute, but first, I need to tell you about my favorite climbing pants. Livezen's EcoTrek trail pants are by far the best climbing pants I've worn in my entire 12 years of climbing. Durable, flexible, lightweight, and packed with useful features like zippered pockets, an internal waistband drawstring, and a unique leg roll-up system. Other climbing pants don't even come close. Either the fit is terrible, they wear out in a single season, or you can only wear them climbing. Livezen's EcoTrek trail pants are unique in the fact that they're rugged enough to climb in and still classy enough to go out on a date in. You're essentially getting 2 pairs of pants for the price of 1. Plus, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy them, try them, and if you still don't like them, they'll just give you your money back. Right now, you can get 15% off your next pair of Livezen EcoTrek trail pants by going to the link in the description below and using code TCM15 at checkout. That's the link in the description below and code TCM15 at checkout. And remember, every dollar spent at Livezen is a dollar spent supporting this podcast.
So, pivoting to your partnership with Jordan, what were some of the differences and what about the partnership with Jordan really stood out to you? And what did you get out of that partnership?
The whole thing with Jordan, it was so wild. He wanted to meet me. There was a climbing event at Donner Summit and Max had been climbing and had been climbing with Jordan for some reason. I don't know how, but I was working for Max at Max's bike shop in Incline Village. And he said, oh yeah, there's this guy, Jordan. He wants to meet you. And I had been climbing a little bit more. And so Jordan met me. And within 45 minutes of meeting Jordan, Jordan said, you need to go back and free climb El Cap. El Cap is a free climb now, and you should do it. You're one of the fathers of this free climbing big wall stuff. You should go do it. And I swear to God, I said, I need to devote a year of my life to it. I need to climb whoever I do the route with for that year, and I can't do any hauling. And I had known Jordan 45 minutes, and he goes, I'll do that. And I went, okay.
Yeah.
And so we went off and we climbed the Hulk together just to see if we're getting along. And then I did Aurora on El Cap with Scott, and Jordan was up on Golden Gate and had broken a flake off on that last couple of pitches and really wrecked his hand. So he hiked to the top and I said, I'll go back there next year to support you, because he had a friend support him there. And he hiked to the top and helped us hump loads down. And then the next year, he just had this plan. I mean, there was something, I didn't see it then, but Jordan somehow saw something in me that he needed. Jordan's parents discovered his same-sex attraction when he was 11 years old. And they basically shunned him at 11 years old. At 11 years old, they told Jordan that he had the devil in him. So when you're 11 years old, your parents are gods. Every single time you've ever gone to bed, they put you to bed. Every single time you ever woke up, they were there. Every meal you ever had, they fed you. And so for them to do that, he was just crushed. And so he was just wandering. And I don't know, I don't want to blow myself up or anything, but somehow he saw that I could be this father figure to him, that I immediately just accepted him. One of my nitwit friends said to Jordan, he goes, "Oh yeah, we're keeping an eye on you to make sure that you're good enough to climb with Mark." And it's like, really? Who the fuck are you? You know, I mean, it's like I can make my own decisions, you know, and Jordan felt the same way, but it just, that sort of comes back to the ego thing. I know who I am. I don't need anyone to build me up. I don't need to prove anything. You know, at that point, I was 63 years old. That was 7 years ago now. And so I didn't need to prove anything. And so I was willing to accept it. So here's this young kid. It also goes to, I didn't mind that climbing was changing. And so Jordan was presenting me with a sort of a new way of climbing. And I'm going, cool, let's go do it. Let's go dangle on El Cap. Let's go climb a bunch of routes. This is going to be great. And so we had a really good time. And Jordan and I became closer and closer, and I started to see that, wow, there's something about this guy. On the rock, he was calm, he was relaxed, he was fun. Off the rock, he was reserved, he didn't like hanging out with people, and I couldn't figure out what the deal was. But I thought, okay, he's 25 years old. He's figuring out who he is, and on the rock is where he feels comfortable. So I was just going, whatever. So then we're in the parking lot at Max's, because Jordan was working for Max also. And so we're sitting there, and Jordan says, "I've got something to tell you. I've got something to tell you. I've got something to tell you." And I'm going, whatever. And he goes, and he came out to me as gay. And I went, I don't care if you're gay. I mean, I had hung out with him enough that I could see that he was a true person. He was but he was struggling. And I said, I don't care. You're a wonderful person. I just simply don't care. And so we went and we continued the whole thing. And then he and I spent 2 months in quarantine together. Someone offered us their house in South Lake Tahoe to do quarantine. And the whole 2 months was really discussing Jordan and his problem, I guess. I hope that's not the bad way to describe it. And it was really, we used to have just knockdown, drag out discussions. It was big time. And I could see how he needed, like, I have a daughter, okay? I have a daughter she's 27 years old. I love my daughter like you can't even imagine. Do you have kids?
No.
Oh yeah, well, wait till you do.
Oh, well.
It's just the freaking craziest thing but I mean, do not get in between me and my daughter, because you will not win. It won't. I mean, it's just, I love my daughter. And when Jordan first told me about this, he was telling me about how his parents had treated him. At first, I hated his parents, but then I realized I was sad for his parents because they didn't get to enjoy the wonderful person that Jordan is, and that I got to enjoy Jordan, and I got to help him along live his best life. Just like, I raised my daughter, and now my daughter is having this crazy life. So to me, it was the same thing. And so he saw that I loved him unconditionally, and that gave him value. He didn't have value before. The devil was in him. And so that later on, when he did come out publicly, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. He texted me that he had just done it on his Facebook or Instagram. And we were in Bishop. I don't know why, I was camping in different spots, but we met somewhere. And when he was getting out of his car, walking towards me, I could see that he was a different person. I could just see it. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. But now he's out there, he's living his best life. And so, and I was talking about this earlier. I look back at the movie and I think about the time, and I see how much Jordan took care of me. He'd carry a heavier pack to the base of the cliff. He always made sure I was clipped in. He always made sure I was comfortable. He just needed someone to accept him. And that was who I was. And it's such a wonderful thing. Like we gave this talk at the American Alpine Club a couple of years ago. And I said, Jordan is like a son to me now. And I love him as much as I love my own daughter. I'm as proud of him as I am of my own daughter. And it's such a wonderful, wild thing that through climbing, I ended up having this relationship with another person that I just helped his life, which to me, I just go, what could possibly more important than that? And now he's out there living his best life. I mean, it makes me so, so, so happy. Yeah.
Yeah, that story is remarkable, and it's so like you were the first person that he told
Yes.
in confidence,
Yeah.
right?
I was the first straight person he came out to.
Yeah, and that's wild because you guys spent so long having him just work through the thought processes and feel accepted, and to be able to like work through that thought process and then feel comfortable enough to then like confront the world with all of this stuff. It's like it's a really heavy responsibility that was on your shoulders.
Yeah, and we were there in quarantine, and Jordan is smart. And so I was just treading water, trying to be relevant and trying to help him along. And even things that happened later on that year, I was an intimate part of his struggle. That just didn't end in quarantine. He struggled. It was hard. And I don't want to make myself out to be some all wonderful person, but I could just see right away that he was an honest, good person. He didn't know who he was. He didn't trust who he was, but I could still see that he was honest. And so that made it all easy. And he didn't have to prove himself to me. That's where, I was older. I'm 40 years older than him. I'm 39 and a half years exactly older than him. So he didn't need to impress me because I don't care. I don't have that, like my stupid friend going, oh, it's like, no, I know who Jordan is. I don't need the ego. I don't need someone to try to impress me. I can see that he's honestly offering to help me do this thing that I thought, wow, this would be pretty freaking cool. And then we went off and we had the road trip to end all road trips. It was freaking great. Imagine being an old codger and having this young gun who wants to go do all this stuff. And you're going, oh, okay, this is going to be fun. He definitely pushed me and stuff. But
yeah. What did you learn about yourself during that whole time?
That I was getting old, for one. Jordan, the first time we climbed, we went into the Hulk. We hiked in, climbed the route, and hiked out in a day. And I'm just going, oh my God. And Jordan is just bounding down the trail, and I'm just freaking crawling down the trail. But I learned that if you're open to it, there's wonderful things that you can experience. If you're, it's the same thing with, we were talking about the progression of climbing, and I feel that I'm so lucky that I've been able to watch so much of that progression. Well, there's that, but then watch this progression in a human being was so fun, and so not fun. That's not a good word for it, but just so rewarding. Yeah, and then what could be more important than helping someone? And that I don't know. It's sort of hard to. What did I learn? I've always been struggling with that, but I just, maybe I taught Jordan to be accepting, you never know what someone else is thinking until you walk in their shoes, kind of thing. So you're not so smart that you know everything, that you can figure out everything. You just got to be ready for it and accepting of it. Be ready for change.
Mm-hmm. Ready for change and is open. Like, I think setting your own personal judgment and bias aside a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And just like being receptive enough to like witness people for who they really are.
Yeah.
And energetically give them the space to be that, because we color people so much with our own judgment, and they can see that, the things you say, the little comments you make, like whether you mean them to be charged in certain ways or whether you don't, they still come across that way with your own internal bias. And so learning to like let that go and just being open with other people it's hard to do sometimes, but such an important skill to have.
Yeah. You see these people, it's like somebody goes and they write, oh, we climbed the shield, but we Jumar'd up to Hart and continued on from there. And someone goes, oh, well, you guys didn't really climb El Cap. And it's like, well, do you understand what their situation was? Like they took time off from their families and their kids and their jobs, and they flew out from Boston for a week, and then it rained for 3 days, and they were crunched on time. So really, does it? We're not pushing the sport forward anymore. So who the fuck cares? They did free blast, 5 years ago, so they still climbed the whole thing, or they didn't. So like, big freaking deal. Really what you're saying is you didn't do it because you didn't do it like I did it. You did the easier version of what I did. So it's your ascent is an affront to my ego.
Self-gratification.
Yeah, it's like, really? I mean, if you're that shallow that it matters.
Let's be real for a second. The blueprint for a successful climbing podcast is simple. Interview the most famous climbers in the world. Big names mean big followings, lots of SEO power, and a built-in audience that helps promote every episode. But this show has never been about that. From the beginning, it has been my mission to bring you stories from the climbing majority. The climbers who don't live in the limelight. The ones who quietly put up routes, build communities, and help give back in ways that are rarely recognized. And while that's what makes this show special, it also means we have an uphill battle when it comes to growth. And that is where you come in. If you believe in the show, if you've been fired up, inspired by an episode, word of mouth is the single most powerful way to help the show. Share an episode with a friend. Post about us on social media. Jump onto Reddit threads and Mountain Project forums and tell people what you've been listening to. Also, I am on a mission to beat Climbing Gold's Spotify review count. If you haven't already left this show a review, please head on over to Spotify to give this show 5 stars. We only have 1,000 more ratings to go.
We talked a lot about like ego and having like climbing not be the focal point of your identity. Where did you diversify? What areas in your life did you put effort and passion into to avoid having climbing be everything?
Well, when I get into something, I really get into it. There was a time I was rabid mountain biker. I was mountain biking so much. There was a whole time that I got into landscape photography, and I was just rabid with it. I was doing trips to Zion and the Wave and just all sorts of places just for photography. And so I felt it that way. My wife and I at the time in Hood River, we built a coffee roasting company. So I was really into that, the whole mechanics of how all that would work. We built a building, and I went out and I bought a CAD program, and I spent a year learning how to use it, and then designed the building that we built. So it was just that kind of stuff. When my daughter was born, I was just all over it. She was just the funnest thing to do, and teaching her how to ride a bike, and teaching her how to drive a car, and teaching her. I've carried her in a backpack while she recited the ABCs about 700 times. Little kids do that, and just that whole thing. And and then I just felt this need. Actually, I got into some friends had Gumbied their way up the nose in 5 days, and I thought, and I hadn't been climbing, and I sort of missed it. I started missing it. I thought, you know what, I can Gumby my way up the nose, and so I just decided that, okay, I want to climb the nose, and then I modified it. It's like I want to do the nose in a day, and then I thought, I'm going to lead the whole nose in a day. And I just devoted a year to that. And my first El Cap route in 30 years was the nose in a day. I led the whole thing in 15 and a half hours.
After taking a break from climbing for quite a long time.
Yeah. I mean,
It's quite the reintroduction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that's just the way I am. I just get into these things. Like when I was windsurfing, I was just totally rabid with windsurfing. Moved to Hood River, Oregon to windsurf, the windsurfing capital of the world. So that's what I did. And then, of course, when I got back into wall climbing, that's what I did. I mean, I just became rabid with it. I climbed the Shield the next year. Then I soloed El Cap the year after that. And I was doing 4 El Cap routes a year. In the last, I think it's the last 15 years, I've done 22 El Cap routes. Yeah, it's freaking nuts, but I just get rabid with this stuff.
Other than the coffee roasting company, what have you made? Like, what has your career been? How have you made your money?
Construction here. I built $1 million homes here in Lake Tahoe. I mean, I was just a carpenter, lead man on the jobs, and I was construction up there in Hood River, and then we built the coffee company from scratch, and then. When we got divorced, she bought my half of the business, and I bought her half of the building.
Oh.
And so then she rented the building from me for a number of years, and then she sold the business. And then recently I sold the building to the people who own the business. And so I'm sort of like, I'm living off that, my Social Security, and I'm still carrying the paper on the building.
Yeah. You were like blue collar carpentry the whole time. You weren't like general contracting.
Nope.
Okay.
I didn't want to complicate my life like that.
Yeah.
One of the big things in my life was I want my life to be simple. And the coffee company, and I'm good at that step by step, we need to do this, and then we need to do that, then we need to do this. That's why I'm such a good big wall climber. And so building the coffee company, I just had it worked so that my life could be easy. And it was really, really efficient. People used to come into our building all the time and go, "Oh, I thought you guys were so much bigger than this." But we gave that image because we were so efficient. We could do a whole lot with very little, which that's the way I just organized it that way. And then Hood River, even though we were the owners, we only work 4 days a week. And so I like to say that I haven't worked a Friday in, the last 35 years, because we used to just work 4 days a week. We just rigged it so that we had an easy life.
I mean, live your life by design.
Yeah, well, that was exactly it. And that's what climbing, that's what climbing taught me. When I first did my first route in El Cap, was the Salthay Wall when I was 18 years old. And I just realized that if I can do that, if I can figure that out, then I can figure anything out, and I can do anything, which allowed us, like we didn't have any business knowledge. We didn't have any financing. We just figured out every single freaking thing. And I thought, and so from the climbing the El Cap thing, I realized my very first time in 74, I thought, I can decide where my life goes. And I really, really did. Moved to Hood River because I wanted to windsurf. I walked into my first job, and I was immediately the foreman on the job. And I said, I won't do it often, but if it's really blowing, I'm going to line the guys out and I'm going to go windsurfing, which I did. And I was a good enough carpenter and a good enough lead man that the contractors that I was working for never lost any money on any job I framed. So they went, okay. So it just taught me that I could control this thing. And so then when we had the coffee company, I just controlled it. And so, I mean, I've been very lucky, of course. And so then when we divorced, I moved into a van. I've lived in a van for the last 10 years. I moved into this apartment exactly a year ago. I lived in a van for 10 years, rock climbing, mountain biking, spending my winters in Baja. But again, it's a little bit of an ego thing where I don't need much. I don't want much. I don't need to have stuff to impress you. I don't need any of that. But I've had just a wonderful life for the last, I've had a wonderful life, but
Yeah. But I think the most important thing is you learned you have agency from an early point, and that shapes your entire life because you live by design. The decisions you make are the way and you shape your life, and having that belief allows you to like actually create a life that you want rather than reacting to circumstances.
right now I'm working to get into professional speaking.
Okay.
And my lesson is if you want to be brave, if you want to accept a little bit less security, you can take your life where you want your life to go. And here it is. I mean, here's the proof right here. I've done this. I'm not a gazillionaire, I don't have several $1 million in the bank, but I sort of don't care because I'm living the life that I wanted to live. And so many people, the keynote that I give is I've never been the smartest person in the room, but yet what I did is I know how to figure it out. This is a great story. My daughter was 11 years old. She was working for us at the coffee company. And so we didn't sell cups of coffee, we sold pounds because we roasted mainly for the restaurants and all that. So every Monday and Tuesday, we had to call our commercial account so that we could get them coffee for the weekend when all the tourists showed up. And so we would call. We had a list of like 25 one day and 25 the next day, and we had to call. So she was 11 years old, and we had her making these phone calls. And we tell her, okay, Ellen, you've got to be clear. You've got to be concise. You can't be wasting these people's time. Hello, this is Ellen with Hood River Coffee Roasters. Can I speak to Dan? I'm trying to get a coffee order for the week. Okay, 1 regular, 2 decaf. Okay, thank you very much. Write it down, make out an invoice, bring it to the guys in back. So I'm in the back, I'm roasting coffee, and the phone rings, and it's Ellen. She says, Dad, I just talked to this guy at 6th Street Bistro, and he said, give me what I had last week. And I went, yeah. And she goes, but I don't know what he got last week. I said, okay, 11 years old. I said, go to his customer file, go to his invoice history, sort from newest to oldest, open the newest and give him that. And she goes, but Dad, and I go, figure it out. And I hung up on her. And so my daughter has a great evil eye. She walked back and she's giving me the evil eye and all that. Years later in college, she said, Dad, that was the most important lesson I ever learned, was figure it out. And so now she's starting a life of her own with agency, figuring it out. And that's what a lot of people don't get. They don't get someone else pouring confidence into them that you are smart, you can figure it out, you don't have to impress anyone else. You don't need this big old house just to make them happy. You don't need this car, blah, 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 blah. And so when they realize that, they go, oh, I am smart. I do have talents. And so that's a lot of what my professional speaking is about because I've actually done it. I never went to any construction training. I started off as a laborer here in Reno, and I just watched guys, and I just started off as then I was a framer, and I used to sit there and read plans and volunteer. I remember I was up in in Truckee, and I was talking to this contractor, and he was walking me around this house, and he wanted me to show up and do some of this pickup work. And he wanted me to cut this little set of stairs off the deck. And he goes, can you cut stairs? And I went, oh yeah, I can cut stairs. And so that was Friday, and I was supposed to be doing this on Monday. This is way before the internet. I left the little interview. I was hired. I was going to cut stairs. I drove here to Reno. I went to the bookstore and I found a book about how to cut stairs, and I learned how to cut stairs that weekend. Yeah. And on Monday I walked up and I cut stairs.
Hell yeah.
And so it's not rocket science. You can do it. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I'm one of those guys that, yes, I can do it.
You believe in yourself.
I believe in myself. And that's what climbing taught me, is to believe in yourself. And so if people step back, that's the I'm competitive, but I want you to rise also. And and that requires belief in yourself. And so when you rise up, and that was part of the thing with Jordan also, is that I was pouring confidence into him. So he was gaining confidence. He could see that I treated him, that I respected him as a full human, that there was nothing wrong with him, but because that had been hard for him. And now he really has learned that lesson, and he's passing it. Jordan is a wonderful person. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. And that's why he's doing so well as a professional climber and in the endeavors that he's taking off now, is that he knows how to give that back to people. He's always telling me, he goes, Mark, I'm the weakest professional climber out there. He goes, there are guys that are so much better than me. And I go, yeah, but Arc'teryx loves you because you embrace everyone. You're approachable. You cheer everyone on. You're like the everyman pro climber.
I think one of the things too, like you can believe that you have agency, but I think a lot of people struggle with having a vision of what they even want to do. Like, just because you believe that you can do something, you then have to have the second piece of that and know what you want to do.
Yes. And
I think that's sometimes even harder than believing that you can do something.
And it's just like, it's your same question of how do you find a good partner? Yes. And again, I've been very lucky. And it wasn't like, I'm one of those guys that I can look at a set of plans and I see it in 3D. It just doesn't, I can do that. And I've been able to do that since I was 10 years old. But the coffee company, it wasn't my idea to start this coffee company, it was my wife's. And so there was so many things that we had to figure out. And I remember sitting around one day in our living room, sitting there all day, just figuring out how we were going to do this price structure and how we were going to do the billing and stuff. So she had the idea, and that to me, it was a very physical business. Coffee comes in, coffee gets roasted, coffee gets bagged, coffee goes out. So to me, I just see it as being very physical. So yes, I hear about people who go, oh, I work from home. I go, I don't even understand working from home. What do you sit there and do emails all day? I mean, I just don't understand that, and even to this day, I don't understand that. But so to me, it has to be physical. And I looked into that with the coffee thing. So if she had said, oh, we're going to do something else that required all this sort
data
of
analytics, or
I would have totally failed or something. So yes, I totally lucked out. I am the luckiest guy in the world, but I did help my luck by having the confidence from climbing, having the agency to deciding that this is what I want to do. Also, I've told you before, I'm a freaking dickhead. I ain't going to go do this or do that because that's going to make you more money. It's like, nah, I ain't doing that. I'm not, you want me to sit here and dig piers all day for this deck? I ain't doing that. I'm just going to be the guy who tells you to go dig the piers.
Yeah. Or I'm just going to take work that I want to do.
Right.
And that's the willingness to say no to certain contracts or no to certain jobs because you have a vision for what you want.
Yeah. Up in Tahoe, it would be like, oh, we're going to go shovel roofs, and I go, no, I mean, yeah, I make $20 an hour during the day, but on weekends I make $100 because I'm going to sit there and shovel a roof, or I'm going to go skiing. So if you want to pay me $100, sure, I'll go shovel your roof for $100. This is back in the 70s, but no, other than that, I don't need to shovel your roof. You go shovel your own freaking roof. I don't care. I'm going to go skiing. So you sort of got to be a dick to, it's like, no, I'm not working Fridays. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, set boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's important.
But this is your life.
It's your life. Shape it how you want it.
You can control your life, but you have to take control of your life. And you have to know that, what's that one movie a long time ago, The Office? It's like, and
The
guy
TV
goes,
show or?
No. There was a movie.
Office Space?
Maybe that's not the name of it. But the one guy, it's a pretty classic meme, and he goes, well, I'm going to have you come in this weekend and do this. It's like, no, I'm not coming in this weekend.
Office Space.
Was Office Space? Yes.
The guy with the glasses.
Yeah.
It's like, Peter, how's it going?
I'm going to have you come in this weekend. Well, tough luck for you, because I ain't coming in this weekend. I mean, what? Are you going to pay me like triple time?
Yeah.
Take a hike.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to be willing to walk away from that job too.
Yeah. I think you have to be willing to walk away from a lot of things. I think that's the same thing in relationships. I think that in my experience in a romantic relationship, I think that it's not a threat. It's not like I'm going to leave you. It's not that. It's just inside your body and your mind and your soul, you need to have certain boundaries, and you need to know that you're willing to walk away to protect those.
Right.
And if that's what needs to happen, it's like, and sometimes that's all it needs. It's that energy you carry. It's just like, these are my boundaries and this is how I feel. Right. And then usually the world respects those.
Yes.
But you have to feel that.
And yet you've got to be
rock solid.
You got to be rock solid.
And then it's going to be tested.
Yeah.
And I think too, like with the sense of agency and like having a vision, I think there's almost a level of like, I use the word arrogance, but that's probably a little too charged.
It is, but it's a good word for it.
Yeah. Audacity. To believe that your vision is something that can be real or valued. Or, I mean, I feel that with this podcast or like certain other ventures that I'm doing. It's like, who am I? Who am I to create this show and believe that people are going to listen to it? Like, I'm just some random climber who straps a GoPro to his head and climbs on, and whatever. It's like, but I want to do this, and I see a vision. I see it with my eyes, like with my mind's eye. I see what this can become. Right. And I'm willing to just like throw myself into the black void and see what happens.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Like when my first job there in Hood River, I just said, I'm not going to do it often, but I'm going to line the guys out and I'm going to go windsurfing. And it's, I made those guys money on every single frame I ever did for them. And I just made sure that their life was easy. But, so you got to back up your BS.
Yeah. You can't just be like, oh, I'm not going to do this. And they're like, well, yeah, you're costing us money. You're fired. It's like, I understand what you value.
Yeah.
This is what I value.
Yeah.
Let's meet in the middle.
And I will provide this.
And I will provide what you need. As long as you respect the boundaries that I have.
And sort of a little bit back to our story of putting your name on the bulletin board, wants to climb the nose, and you walk up and say, yeah, I can climb 510C. It's like, well, okay, can you really? Can you really do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the job I have now, it's like technically a 9 to 5. But I mean, that was one thing it was a job opportunity that I had. It was for more money, but the stipulation that I laid out to my boss, I was like, look, like full transparency. I'm creating a podcast. I'm a climber. I'm going to take days off to climb. And like, I need you to understand the passion that I have for my life. And I need like you to understand that I'm going to be like fluid in my schedule a little bit, and that I might be working on some other things while I do it. I will always get the work done. You will never have to worry about deadlines for me. You never have to worry about like quality of work. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to just be there 9 to 5, just wasting time.
Yeah.
Like, we need to have like an understanding there.
Right.
And it's been 3 years and that has been just like nothing but respected.
Well, and because when you did that, you were honest, and they could just sense that you could back up what you're saying. And certainly if you couldn't, you'd been out of there quick. And so that just builds up. Now they go, oh yeah, Kyle, that guy, when he says something, he'll do it, you know? And it's sort of like with Max, you know, our partnership, you know, when he says it, he can do it. You know, when I go climb El Cap with Scott says he can do it, we're going to do it. You know, with Jordan, that's the kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust is earned.
Yeah. Trust is earned. Yeah. Yeah.
Before we get back to it, if you've been listening to the show, you probably know how much time and effort and love I put into this project. The research, the conversations, the production, the editing, all of it. And while it might seem like I've got a team of people on this project, I don't. It's just me. And even with sponsors, I spend a large amount of my own personal money on this project simply because I love it. If you're a listener that's looking for a way to give back to this show in a meaningful way, please become a Patreon subscriber. Once you become a supporting member of the Climbing Majority, not only will you feel really good about yourself, but you'll also get access to the ad-free version of the show and exclusive content. If this speaks to you, click the link in the description or go to patreon.com/theclimbingmajoritypodcast to become a supporting member of the show today.
Kind of like wrapping this up a little bit. I have a couple questions. There's like that phrase, tall people reach and short people climb. How do you feel about that phrase?
That's sort of another thing that it's just something to put people down, really. You know, John Bragg used to say, "I'm not good, I'm just tall," which he was tall and he was the person saying it, so that's okay.
It's comedic when you put the shame or put the burn on yourself.
On yourself, yeah. But there's, you know, in my whole life, I've been truly stopped by only a couple routes. And it doesn't, I mean, you know, I look at Lynn Hill, you know, when she and I get together, we always argue about who's shorter, you know.
How tall are you?
Well, I used to be 5'2.5". Now I'm 5'1" and 7/8".
Well, we're 5'2". It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's important to us little people. And which is really funny. I used to have a 4-inch ape index. Well, now since I'm shrinking, my ape index is 6 inches. You know, but it's just climbing. We're climbing rocks. This just it fits different people. I remember I did a route in New Hampshire. It turned out to be the first 512 in New Hampshire. This thing called White Eye. And I went there, and Jimmy Dunn was there, and Henry Barber was there, you know, when Henry was Hot Henry. And they're all going, "Oh, you're too short, you're never going to do it." But I could get all balled up in this one thing. I did it first try and did it. And they're all going, "Oh my God," you know. So of course I did the pitch and lowered down and said, "Well, you guys will never do it. You're too tall." You know, but it's that kind of thing. We're climbing these rocks that vary. And if you think you're short or tall or whatever, and that helps, whatever.
How much would you say, like, because like, how much would you say normalized movement beta, whether it's in guidebooks or mountain project, is biased towards taller people? Like, when you read beta or you get beta from people, it's like you don't even take it seriously because you're just like, no, I'm gonna be doing what I need to do up there.
It's certainly biased more towards the average height person. I don't think it's biased towards tall people, but yeah, definitely biased. I mean, that would seem.
I mean, that's just the bell
obvious,
curve.
actually.
The bell curve.
That's just the bell curve. But if you're, what was it? I was on. I was doing VMC direct on Cannon Cliff in New Hampshire a million years ago. And the guys ahead of us were doing the second ascent. We were doing the third free ascent. And it was John Bragg, who's very tall, and another friend of mine who's 6 feet. And I was doing the crux, and there was just below the anchor. And they're both going, well, reach this, reach that. And they're both, well, I don't know what you're going to do. And I did it. And I did it first try. And they had both fallen on it. And they went, well, I guess that proves that, And so it's never really bothered me too much. I mean, okay, so like the rocker blocker on well, for me, it's a freaking 16-inch jump. It's far. And I think if I went to the gym and practiced jumping for a couple weeks, I could probably do it. But Jordan just stood there and did this little hop and he grabbed it. And I'm going, hey, well, fuck you. So yes, so in that kind of situation, but, and I've heard of, who was it? Really, really good woman climber, but she's really short too. And she was trying to run across the rocker blocker and jump and grab the thing. And I don't know if she ever did it, but anyway. And so Jordan just bent down and I stood on his knee to grab it. And then I hung there and went, okay, is this good? And then I just did all the pull up. So something like that, but I don't care. If someone wants to say, well, then Hudon, you didn't do it. I'll go, whatever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's just funny. My fiance, she's small. I don't know how tall. Probably sub 5. And I'm 6'2" plus 5, plus 5.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so like I like shout bait at her, and she's just like, just stop.
Right.
Just stop.
Yeah.
And usually it's all like I definitely use my height to an advantage, and I like love to like pull up really high and do like long extended reaches.
Yeah.
And so I'm always just like, yeah, there's a crimp like up there on the left, and she's like, no, it's like what do you mean, the one I have to dyno to?
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah. It's funny.
That's part of climbing.
Yeah, of course.
It's figuring out that puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really worried.
Well, I mean,
it's
your personal experience, so it's not like you're comparing it to anything else. You're just like, this is just how I climb. This is what I do.
Yeah.
These are the moves.
I get to stuff like that and I just laugh.
Yeah.
Just because it's like I remember Jordan and I were on Rainbow Country, the harder. Yeah. And there's this 112B pitch that off this ledge. And I'm just making this giant stretch. Even with my ape index, there's just no way. And I'm going, Jordan, you fucker, you're just going to be able to grab this and grab that and walk across this. I said, I should be able to have a sling that I could, give myself but so I couldn't do it. And there's another part up there that was really, really hard because you know how that sandstone breaks really cleanly, no features in between, that I couldn't do. I'm like, whatever, it's,
You're there for the experience.
You can't be PO'd at it's not unfair. It's just, this is your life. Life is not unfair. Life is just life. Rock climbing is just rock climbing. Just sit there and laugh at it. Laugh at the situation. When you're squirreling through some little chimney, and Max was really sort of chesty, and he's like, I have this picture of him, it looks like he's toothpaste being squirted out of a tube, and he's breathing hard, and he's struggling, and I just squirmed right up the thing, there's pluses and minuses.
Yeah. Exactly. You've been climbing for 54 years, you're 70 now, and you seem like you're in extremely good shape. You had some crazy climbing accomplishments. You've climbed El Cap 22 times in the last 12 years. Not every climber at your age is in your shoes, especially like given your line of work, like blue collar work, hard on the body. Why are you so fit? Why are you still climbing as hard as you are? Like, do you have some sort of Brian Johnson routine? Like what's your secret?
My only secret, and it's really crazy because I have no pains.
Wow.
My knees don't hurt. My hips don't hurt. I have a little bit of arthritis in my thumbs. My back, yes, with all my construction, my back is still just fine. I have no idea. My mom is 94 years old. She walks with a walker, but my mom is the ever-ready bunny. I'm taking bets that my mom lasts to beyond 100. And so it's just, I have good genes. That's just all there is to it. Now, I've never spent much time on the couch. I've never spent much time watching TV. And I eat pretty well. I don't go to McDonald's or any of that fast food stuff. I can't remember the last time I ever drank a a Coke or any of that kind of thing. I eat pretty well. I exercise a lot. I was at the gym this morning lifting weights. I ride my mountain bike. And I've just stayed active my whole life. It's crazy. I mean, I am amazed at what I can do. I just go, well, like I'm not climbing El Cap anymore, or I'm not, I'm getting ready to be done. And this is interesting. It's interesting and it's hard. I could keep doing it. And I could, it's hard to say that I could do the nose if I wanted to. That sort of diminishes people who are really out doing it. That's sort of a little slight to them, because wanting to is so important. I say that there's three things to be a great climber. You need to have strength, you need to have technique, and you need desire. You can get strength. We can teach you how to get strength. We can teach technique. But if you don't have desire, there's no book you can read that's going to teach you desire. You just have to have desire. And I have that desire. But right now, I'm just going, things are, it's interesting. And I'm trying to write about this, but it's just, I can go climb El Cap. I can haul a 250-pound bag. I can hump loads to the base. I can do those pitches and all that kind of stuff. But I'm just getting that feeling of I could be done. It's really interesting that I love it so much, but I have that feeling that I could be done.
Done with El Cap or done with climbing?
Done with climbing El Cap. I don't think that I'm going to be done with climbing, but I'm really fading. I mean, I'm really fading out of climbing right now, actually. I want to still climb. I've made it for my project of the year that I want to red point Panic in Detroit at Donner, 512C. I did the first ascent of it, a million years ago on a top rope back when those things were unleadable. But now I want to lead it. So I've just given myself this project to sort of have something to do. But like we were talked about earlier, I get rabid with doing something, and I'm a little bit rabid with the public speaking right now. So I'm really working on that, and I really want to do that. And I feel like I've done everything I need to do with climbing El Cap. I just wrote a really good article, and I think they're going to print it in Summit Journal.
Cool.
Soon.
That guy's rad. I interviewed him.
It's
Levy?
Yeah, it's a good article. It took me a long time to write, and I think it's really heartfelt. But I'm trying to work through why I feel done with it, and then who will I be when I'm done with it? Because it's been such an identity of me. And then there's all like, I just need to do stuff. What will I do? And so I'm thinking, okay, so is this public speaking gonna grab me? Is that something that I'm gonna want to do? Am I gonna feel the rewards from that? I feel that yes, I will, but still, I'm still.
It's not in the world of climbing, so it's like this big step into something new.
Yes, and it's like I'm just stepping out there into the unknown. I'm going to give it a try.
You've got the vision though, and that's what counts.
Well, and that's the thing. That's that desire. Back in the day, I used to say that I have more desire than anyone else. I wanted to do it. And sort of to your question, why are you still doing it now? It's like, because I want to do it, because I'm ready to go do it.
I mean, that desire shapes like how you make decisions.
It's back to when you're telling your boss that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, but I ain't going to do this and I ain't going to do that. That's your desire for the life that you want, creating your podcast. That's what you need to do. You just have it. Nothing's going to stop you.
Yeah. I mean, I
dedicated my entire weekend to drive 8 hours both ways to come out here and sit with you and spend time creating this show. And like, that's desire. I could have spent the entire weekend climbing.
Yeah.
Here I am not getting any pitches in.
You ripped up my whole living room. You're gonna have to put my furniture.
That's why I came here.
You're gonna have to put my furniture all back and everything. Yeah, and so, but it's interesting. I ain't gonna live forever, and I'm on the downhill side of it. So I've got to appreciate that, and I have to continue doing things that make me feel like I'm still valid. You know, when people get old, they realize people don't need them anymore. And so I don't need to be needed, but I need to still produce. I really feel that I can influence people and help people in their lives. And, you know, I've done that with Jordan. I helped Scott get his big wall gear business off. And it just makes me so happy that I was able to help these people in their lives. And if I can do that in speaking, that's just going to make me immensely happy. And it'll make me feel like I'm still doing something positive and serious.
Mm-hmm. I see it. I think it's awesome. Yeah. I think it brings the question of legacy a little bit, is like part of it wanting to, obviously not as the sole desire, but like imprint some sort of legacy, like, because I mean, doing speeches and like you're archiving your voice into history. Is there like part of that to like leave some sort of legacy behind?
If I had a legacy in climbing, I would like people to think that through all the changes that I've seen, I still enjoyed it, that it was still valid, that I wasn't stuck in one spot. I didn't become a curmudgeonly old guy who says, oh, you, back in the day, we used to do it like that. You kids these days, you know, that's not it. Everyone's day is valid for them, you know, and I'm not going to put you down going, oh, well, I did that route. We were using nuts. We didn't use these cam things.
Well, I think that's defending the past rather than living in the present.
Yeah, exactly. That was then. People are always saying, oh, I can't believe you climbed this route with hexes. It's like, that's what we had.
you know, I can't imagine. I can't tell you how many times I get comments on Facebook like, I climbed that route back in the 60s with hexes. I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Good for you, dude. Like, I'm not going to do that.
And you know what? If we were standing at the base of that route and we showed you cams, you would have taken those cams, you know? So don't give me this, like, I'm such a hero because I climbed this thing with hexes. It's like, that's the tool we had, you know? So.
That's cool. That's awesome. But yeah, so as I told you before, I'm going to be going for the nose in May and Naiad in October. For anybody listening that has similar objectives, wants to get into big walling, you're kind of like a legend in that space. Obviously you can't break down big walling in, you know, the next 5 minutes, but what's some advice that you have for someone picking these goals?
Don't figure it out up there. Figure it out beforehand. I give big wall clinics, and this is one of my big things, is figure it out beforehand. I've climbed big walls with guys who know what they're doing, you know, with Max, with Shane Lempe, with Scott. And every single time we've been up on a wall, we've sat there and looked, or before going up, we've said, okay, what are you going to do here? What am I going to do there? How are you going to clean this? What happens? Blah, 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 blah. Every single freaking pitch. And so certainly people on the nose, you know, you've got to be able to, there's the communication. How are you going to clean this? How are you going to lead this? What happens if I can't hear you? So sit down there and have no ego, be a total weenie, and just sit there and go, I'm going to do this. You're going to do that. We're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. Every single freaking pitch. How are you going to thread on top of boot flake? Are we going to leave beaners, or are you going to untie, or what? You know, like, okay, are we going to do this? The whole 9 yards. and learn it. Just how are you going to set up anchors? What happens if I can't hear you? You're going to have done the king swing and eagle ledge is around the corner, so you can't see them. And it might be nuking winds, and so you can't hear them either. But okay, you feed out some rope. You feed out about 10 feet of rope. Okay, he's probably tying the knots for the anchor. Then the haul line sort of twitches and it comes tight to the haul bag. He's not free climbing with the haul line on his waist. So lower out the bag. You don't need to go ready to haul when ready, blah, 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 all that bullshit. So just understand what's going to happen. What's going to happen next.
Have a plan for everything.
Have a plan. People, if you don't plan, just what are you going to do here? How are we going to do that? How is your second going to follow the great roof? Like if you leapfrog some gear, how is that going to happen? The whole 9 yards, and then be positive and just fucking get going and have a fun time.
Have fun.
Yeah.
What does life look like for you now?
Well, I'm giving a slideshow this Wednesday, rock climbing slideshow. My slideshows are a little bit more these days. I'm done talking about my slideshows. Rock climbing slideshows are pretty much, this is me doing badass shit. This is me. This is me. This is me. This is me. I'm totally done with that. That's me telling you about my achievements, and I don't really care about that anymore. What I want to do, and I make my slideshows more speaker oriented, where I want to involve the audience. I gave a slideshow at the facelift a couple years ago, and it's about experiences and memories. Like, okay, it's completely valid to show up in Yosemite the very first time and have a big list. Oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, and run around like a chicken with your head cut off, ticking off these routes. It's totally valid. You don't even remember who you did the routes with because you just need to do those routes. Well, 10 years later, you want to do Astroman, but now you're not that kid anymore and you want to have an experience. And so, no, I want to do it with this guy. He and I are going to do this route together. So the way you experience your life changes. It becomes less about achievements and more about memories, which is sort of back to the prize or the memory kind of thing. Back to when you're in that bed, you're not going to be going, remember when we speed climbed the nose, and remember we hiked into the Hulk. It's going to be, remember that sunset and we were benighted somewhere? Where the hell were we? But remember that sunset? Remember we shivered all night? Where the hell were we?
Remember we ran out of space in the poop tube?
Yeah, exactly that. Remember you dropped the cap off the water bottle. We didn't have any more water. And, remember we dropped the rope and, those kind of things. So that's what's going to be imprinted in you. Probably the best speaking event I've done so far is that at that slideshow at the facelift, I got people to cry because I got them to realize that they are going to move through this path where it's brand new, it's wonderful, it's these experiences, they're growing, and then one of these days, it's not going to be there. They're going to move on. They're going to leave the valley, and we're probably all not going to know the last time we drive out of the valley. But what would you be thinking if you knew? How would you be looking at it? What memories would you want to keep really close? And you could sort of take that with life too. Like, be present in your life. Don't just pass it off. You don't want to die with a bunch of ribbons on the wall and no memories. You want to be the person with the memories. You want people to be sitting around. You want us to walk out of that room after you've taken that last breath and say, yeah, Kyle was a great guy. We did this and we did that. And that's where you will have affected lives. That's where you will continue to live, really.
I love it. I love your story. I appreciate, again, giving me the time to sit here and share your story. It's been awesome. Where can people follow your story? Where can people follow what you're doing?
Well, I don't have a spot yet, but I've got the Mark Hudon climbing.com where people can sign up for the Hudon Academy, where you sort of buy my time to tell you all about wall climbing and stuff like that.
Like one-on-one sessions? One-on-one?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It ends up, my little tagline is 50 years of experience in your pocket, so you get to talk to me, which sounds sort of dickish, but.
Do you ever think about doing like pre-recorded, like coursing kind of thing?
I would, and I might be doing more of that kind of stuff. I have someone who's helping me with my public speaking, and so I'm trying to develop that public speaking site. So just dealing with someone who's more into that video and kind of thing, I might do that. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm really lazy, but other times I don't. It's hard to. I'm sort of an old guy too, and like I ain't exactly fluent with Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. But
it's a whole beast.
It would, hopefully that the Summit Journal article gets published and people really appreciate that. I've got a bunch of my trip reports on my site, markhudonclimbing.com. And I thought I did a good job on a few of my trip reports, so you can go there and read those things. There's some old photos, like me on Tales of Power and Separate Reality back in the 70s kind of thing. Free climbing the Phoenix, with freaking hexes kind of stuff.
No one cares about your hexes.
Yeah, no one I know. Are you jabbing me there? Yeah, no one cares. No, but it's interesting. It's fun.
No,
it's
I'm
like,
just totally making
moly.
jokes. I'm just making jokes.
Yeah.
Instagram, people can follow it. I think you've got an Instagram.
I do have an Instagram in it, and I do post things on it, but it's more speaker. I've been trying to give slideshows and stuff. I like doing the slideshows. I'm giving one in Sacramento in middle of May, I think it is, along with the Big Wall Clinic. But those are fun. Jordan and I are giving the keynote speech at the Lander Climbers Festival.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, so that's fun. That'll be neat. I can't wait. We haven't written anything. Amy hasn't told us what she wants us to talk about yet, but I'm sure it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Nice. It's awesome. It's very cool. It's you're like at the end of a chapter and beginning a new one.
Yeah.
And it must be exciting, and I can't wait to see what you do with it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Yeah,
sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
This has been great.
Cool.